Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range with a couple of rifles that have been adopted by USSOCOM or the US Army, but these are facsimiles. These aren't exact clones of those rifles, but this is about as close as I can get. We have the M110A1 that the US Army has adopted, which is basically the H&K. This would come after the M110, which was a Knight's armament rifle, chambered in 7.62x51 NATO as well. And then over here we have the LMT, Lester, Mike, and Terry sharpshooter. This would have been adopted by the UK and used in service as a 7.62x51 NATO chambered rifle as well. But USSOCOM just recently announced that they have adopted a very similar rifle to this one, but chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. Now, 6.5 Creedmoor is a cartridge that I adopted many years ago when it came out, and factory loading started to become available for it. I started to shoot it, started to realize very quickly it offered things over 308, and the U.S. government, U.S. military has determined the same to be true. The U.S. government, and I don't agree with this because I've shot both these rifles well past this distance, but the U.S. government will tell you that the 7.62x51 rifles that you see here are really good to about 800 meters. Now, you can push 308 well past 800 meters, but that's what they say. And they want the 6.5 Creedmoor because they say that it's, by their rating, good to 1,000 meters. So it's going to give their DMRs just a little bit more distance, in their opinion. So the 6.5 Creedmoor does start to move past 308 ballistics as you go further out because it has a better ballistic coefficient and sectional density, all that good stuff, which really makes it a better long-range cartridge. But what we want to do today is compare the M110A1-esque rifle that you see here to the LMT UK version, because I don't have the 6.5 Creedmoor version, but we'll talk a little bit about the features on that rifle in this video. And we're going to compare this rifle just in terms of accuracy. May talk a little bit about the features, but I really want to see how the HK performs next to LMT at 100 yards using Federal Gold Medal match. And we're going to shoot some 168 grain match ammo. And I want to thank our friends over at Federal for supplying the ammunition free of charge to the channel. I've been shooting Federal ever since I was a young man, and I love the ammo. Good people over there. All right, guys, so let's get started with today's video, taking a closer look at the H&K and the LMT, and let's see which one of these can outshoot the other one. Also, keep in mind, this is a fixed 6 power on here. This is a optic that comes with the LRP package, the MR762A1 LRP, which this is. I will be dialing this back to 6 power, which I just did. So both of these rifles will have similar magnification just to keep the playing field as level as we possibly can. All right, let's get started with today's video. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. All right, so let's get this party started with the LMT. Now, the LMT that you see here, again, is not a clone-correct version of the new rifle adopted by USSOCOM, a 6.5 Creedmoor. This one doesn't have an ambi lower on it, okay? So the new rifle adopted by 6.5 Creedmoor will have the ambi LMT lower on it. The rifle, from what I gather, that SOCOM adopted is going to have a 14.5-inch barrel. Clearly, this one's longer than that. This is not an SBR. But one of the things I like about the LMTs is the fact that this Picatinny rail across the top, and this is true on the new SOCOM rifle, is monolithic, right? It's all one piece. And that's beneficial in military circles because if you want to put night vision out here, clip-ons in front of the main optic and things like that, this is going to be a more rigid solution than something with a handguard that if you bang it really hard, it can twist a little bit and go out of alignment. So that's generally considered to be a better solution. Now, we don't have that ambi lower on this one. But one of the things I do like about the LMT, for example, is that it will use a standard diameter buffer tube back here so you can put different accessories on it that are readily available. The M110A1 H&K is going to have its own proprietary diameter stock tube and things like that, which is a little bit off-putting, especially if you like to change your stock out, which a lot of people do, especially with precision rifles like this, because ergonomics is key to, you know, really, really good accuracy performance. Now, this rifle has an RC2 Surefire 30 cal can on it, which would be the correct can for the UK adopted rifle, which again, this is a clone of. This is what's called a reference rifle from LMT, which means it's their civilian commercial version of the actual military rifle. Now, they do plan on releasing, or they have released, a reference rifle for the new 6.5 Creedmoor SOCOM rifle, but I haven't gotten my hands on one. So that's why we're doing the test today, both in 30 cal. This one is also a direct gas impingement rifle, where the H&K is going to be a short stroke gas piston. But ironically, it seems like the H&K shoots a little softer. That's a bit subjective. I'll think more about that when I'm shooting both rifles side by side, but that certainly is how I remember things. All right, so we have it all set up. We do have our federal ammunition over here. I have 5 rounds loaded. We have some targets down at 100 yards. I have 3 pasties for the LMT. I have 3 pasties for the H&K. So with all that being said, let's get all set up here, and we will shoot our first 5-round group. And then the next 2 will be 3 rounds because I'm just conserving the ammunition I have on hand. And then we'll move over to the H&K and do the exact same test with it. So let's get started. All right, guys. So one of the things I do want to say is that neither of these rifles have the ambi controls over here. And I really do like the ambi controls. It's not that I'm left-handed, but it's really nice just to be able to reach up with your finger and drop the bolt over here on the ambi rifles. So maybe someday. 5 rounds loaded. And that first top left target is all mine. All right. All right, guys, here goes group 2. This is just going to be 3 rounds. And I did dial in 2 clicks of elevation, which will be about a 1/2 inch up, and 2 clicks of windage, which will be about a 1/2 inch left, to try to get the next group onto the pasty, because a couple of rounds from the first group fell off the low right-hand side. All right, I'll load up 3 more rounds. And this will be our last 3-shot group. And that last one was probably the best one, but we'll have to walk down range to find out. All right, let's get the MR762A1 LRP up next. All right, this is the old H&K, the M110A1. Now, this one does not have the ambi controls on it that would be proper for the M110A1. But this is, again, as close as I'm probably going to get in my lifetime to actually getting my hands on one of those. Now, this is the more current generation rifle, so the handguard is going to be slightly different. You have seen me shooting a first generation LRP on the channel before years ago. I still have the rifle, but this is its current replacement. Now, as I was talking about the LMT, remember I was talking about the 1913 rail being monolithic on the LMT? It is not on the H&K. There's a tabbed section up here underneath the optic that has a little tab that goes from the handguard into the receiver to kind of keep it from clocking, which is a solution to the problem I was talking about earlier, that if you put something heavy out here in military applications, you're door kicking and banging the gun around, you could clock that handguard and knock things out of alignment. In an attempt to stop that from occurring, they've tabbed this handguard. Now, H&K, as I've already mentioned, has its own proprietary castle nut. Look at this hoss, big fat buffer tube back here. This one does have the stock with the cheek riser on it that can be moved up and down, and when you move the stock for its length of pull, this does not move with it. Does not have an anti-charging handle. Again, this is the optic that comes with the LRP package. This would not be the correct optic for the M110A1. I believe that's a SIG Romeo Tango or whatever they call their optics. It's a SIG LPVO, basically, at least one of the optics that are used on it. I do know that Night Force got a contract with the U.S. Army for some higher magnification scopes. I don't know what they're currently using. Out here on the end, we have an old school CSAS can. Look at those markings. This would be the correct can for a CSAS rifle that the U.S. Army would have adopted, the DMR. This rifle is a short stroke gas piston rifle. It uses its own proprietary magazines, where the LMT uses a standard Stoner magazine, an SR25 style pattern magazine. These are proprietary. So there is that. Why the government wouldn't want to use an SR25 and M110A1 is beyond me, given that would make it compatible with the M110. But who cares, right? It's only money, and the government apparently has plenty of it because they're taxing you to get it. All right, with that being said, let's do a little bit of shooting with the MR762A1 LRP. So here goes the first 5 rounds through the H&K at 100 yards. I do want to point out that, and Jason can confirm this, that it is set to 6 power. That is to try to keep the playing field level because, again, the LMT has a fixed 6 on it in terms of magnification. All right. Cheerio. Maybe I should have been doing my bad English accent with the LMT, not the H&K. All right, first group will be a 5-shot group. The next 2 will be 3. Curious on that one. I can see one dropped off. Not too shabby. All right. Let's get her loaded up for the next string. All right, guys. Rifle is ready to go. I have 6 rounds loaded into the magazine, so I'll shoot 3 at target 2 and 3 at target 3. And not stop to reload. Assuming I can remember to move after 3 rounds to the next target. All right. All right, next target. Oof, last group was ugly. All right. Let's see how our 2 rifles did. All right, so how do the 2 rifles do? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look. All right. LMT, Lester Mike and Terry, right up here. 5-shot group. And we measured the group sizes center to center from the 2 holes furthest apart from one another. And so that's where we get the measurement. 1.5 inches to the 2 holes furthest apart. And that was 5-shot group for the LMT. Again, we're using 168 grain Federal gold match. 3-shot group, 2 through the same hole, 1 up here. The 3 together measure 0.8 of an inch center to center. And then the 3rd group, nice clover leaf, I like to see this, 0.7 center to center of an inch. The HK, the 5-shot group, gave us 1.1 inch center to center. And so that's a really good group. Over here, 1.3 inches. It was vertically stringing. And then 1.6 inches on the final 3-shot group. Now, what I will say is what I think I was struggling with, especially on this last target, is that dialed down to 6 magnification because the scope that we're using on the HK, it's a Vortec Viper. This is a first focal plane scope. So when I dial the magnification down, the reticle gets really small and somewhat hard to see precisely. That and the target is much smaller. At 12 power, reticle's bigger, target's bigger, and it's easy to see what you're doing. And so on that last group, I'm pretty sure it was me causing that larger group size than the rifle itself. With this one, the 6 power that we have on here, this ACOG, the light transmission on this isn't quite as good as on this, so it's a little darker, but it has a nice big chevron, and it's very easy to see. So you just put the target on the tip of that chevron, and it's very easy to get a good sight picture. And this is a more traditional crosshair with a mil-type reticle in it. So which one is the more accurate? I will also say that I have an earlier LRP, a Generation 1 rifle, and that rifle shoots better than my second rifle that you see out here. I don't know what generation this one is. We'll just call it second gen. My first generation rifle actually shoots better. That gun consistently do about 1 inch on 5-shot groups. Sometimes it'll get to 3/4 of an inch. It doesn't really open up to almost 2 inches, 1.6 inches. I've never seen it do that. But again, I think this was shooter error and not being able to use the scope effectively at 6 power. So what do I think of the two rifles? Oh, I love them both. I think these are just outstanding rifles, and for the roles that they're intended for, which is DMR, designated marksman's rifles, I think they serve their purpose quite well. Now, I do love 308. 308's affordable, widely available, and great match ammunition choices out there for you. But I am more of a fan of 6.5 Creedmoor, so I'd like to have both these rifles in 6.5 Creedmoor. Again, for those extended ranges. But that's just a matter of personal preference. Either of these rifles are going to perform pretty darn well. The only AR-10 I think that I've seen shoot consistently better, the Ruger SFAR, believe it or not, and my Daniel Defense. That thing shoots amazingly well. But these are no slouches. These are beautiful rifles. And so which one is better? Dealer's choice. Take your pick. It's personal preference. Both awesome rifles. If you have any questions about what you saw in today's video, you can ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after I post a new video to answer any questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is become part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and support button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Thank you for 17 years of support. Swing by, check out Copper Custom. We'll talk to you guys soon.